Ladies and gents, boys and girls, today we're going to do a recap of what is, in my opinion, the greatest positional chess game ever played. The year is 1974, and it's at the Olympiad final between Anatoly Karpov and Wolfgang Unzicker. I often come back to this game when I'm looking for motivation or inspiration regarding chess. If I'm ever feeling a little low, the ELO's not doing too well, I often come back to this game as motivation and to remind myself how the game is played at the master level. So I recommend you save this game into some of your YouTube playlists so that you can always come back to it in 6 months, a year's time when you're looking for a little bit of an uplift when it comes to chess. Anatoly Karpov has the white pieces, Wolfgang has the white pieces. We get the king's pawn opening, symmetrical, standard stuff. We get the Ruy Lopez. Been played many a time, will be played many a time in the future. Goes for a6, standard stuff, all theory, all book. Retreats the bishop, attacks the pawn. Anatoly lets him take it, but as you know, taking the pawn's not too advisable. It gets pretty sharp pretty fast. Bishop e7, bishop e1, rook e1, and b5. Retreats the bishop back. d6, and the all-important c3. Now, as someone who has played the Italian and a little bit of the Ruy Lopez, but more of the Italian, the c3 move is very, very important. It offers the break on d4, and it also offers an escape square for the bishop back to c2 should your opponent play knight a5 and c5, which is mainline theory against these sort of positions. You get castles, h3, I guess to stop the bishop pin, although you probably wouldn't see that all that much these days, but I'm sure Karpov has something in mind. We do get knight a5, drop the bishop back, and as you know, you can allow the take, but it's not advisable because your light squared bishop in the Italian Ruy Lopez setups is usually a very, very, very powerful piece, and you don't want to trade it off for a knight. So Anatoly drops the bishop back. We get c5, like I said, book, standard theory here. Knowing that your opponent is striking with the d4 break, you push c5 to take a little bit more control over the d4 square, and then you can always retreat the knight back to c6, even finch out of the bishop, and you have a very, very nice position. We get d4, and the queen comes to d7. As you can see, I've already done a little bit of illustration here. The reason why queen c7 is a good move, you add an extra defender onto the e5 pawn, and you also allow the rook swing across to put the rook on the d file, which is the same file as Anatoly's queen. We get knight to d2. Now, knight to d2, as I've said, I've played this position many a times myself. The idea is usually knight f1, followed by knight g3, so you can play something like, in theory, knight h4 and get a nice outpost defended here with a knight on f5. Now you can also play knight f1 followed by knight e3. Both positions work. Actually, yeah, I don't know if you would want to. You don't really want to play this because there is a discover here. So I guess like Garry Kasparov says, a knight on f5 is worth about a pawn. So the aim of the game is to get one of the two knights onto the f5 square. We drop the knight back. Yep, of course. Offers a little bit more control here. And you can choose what you want to do with the light squared bishop. Do you want to commit it to the fianchetto on this nice diagonal, or leave it here and or lift it to d7, or even not e7? Obviously, that would be a big mistake, but you get the gist. Do you want it on this diagonal or this one? We'll see. Okay. We get the immediate d5, asking questions of the knight already, which is a good move because, as you can see, this square is occupied. You don't necessarily want to go back to the starting square, and a knight on the rim is dim. So if you move the knight back to a5, it just came from there. So you're wasting a move, and the knight isn't really doing all that much on a5. So good move, but locking the center simultaneously, meaning once the center has been locked like this, the power of the bishops is kind of nullified, meaning your knights are going to be preferred in given circumstances. Okay, we get the knight back to the starting 8th rank, which is interesting because these two squares are controlled, so the knight's never coming here, and unless you were planning to go here, for what reason I'm not quite sure, because the only square you could go to from there is back to a5. A bit of an interesting move, but again, they're grandmasters, so I'm sure they know what's going on. And we get the a4 push, the a4 break. And the reason that's a great move is because, like I said again, lock center, you need to be looking for pawn breaks. Whenever the positions end up like something like this, where you've got a very, very interlocked pawn structure, you're going to be preferring the knights over the bishops, but if you're wanting to get the bishops into the game somehow, you're looking for pawn breaks, and Anatoly goes with a4. We get rook b8, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Now Anatoly has this very nice open A file for his rook, but not the end of the world. And another pawn break with b4. Now, what you'll notice about this game that is so incredible is that it seemingly looks like Anatoly's just making not amazing, like, oh wow, what a great move, pawn moves, but he's making Wolfgang commit his pawns in a certain way that Anatoly knows he can manipulate later on to his advantage. And what you're about to see is it's incredible. Positional play-wise, it is absolutely phenomenal because it shows how far ahead of the game Anatoly actually was in this specific game. Okay. We do get knight to b7 because that knight was a pain in the arse on the back rank. You want it off the back rank, and it adds some pressure onto this square. It isn't going here anytime soon because the pawn's looking at that square. But you don't want a knight on your back rank, and it is a move 16, so it's long due that knight gets on the back rank. Bishops you can often keep on the back rank if you really wanted to, or out of circumstances. It's not such a bad thing because it is actually doing a decent job on this diagonal. Okay. We get the knight to f1 move, which, as anyone who plays Ruy Lopez Italian style systems knows, this is pretty standard, bringing the knight to either g3 or e3, followed usually by a knight to f5 with some preparation. Okay. We get bishop d7, just developing, finally has connected the rooks on the back rank, and it looks like a decent position for both players. Nothing in it all that much, it says plus 0.4, but negligible position for both. Probably with perfect play it's a draw, but as you're about to see, Anatoly has got a different intention in mind. Okay. We get bishop e3, just developing his last piece, developing the last piece, and getting a nice little diagonal for the bishop. There wasn't really anywhere better to put it. If you put it here onto d2, it's essentially a glamorized pawn. You may as well put it onto a nice e3 square, hoping that this diagonal opens up, and it's got this diagonal as well. Okay. We get rook a8 because rook a8, excuse me. We get rook a8 because you can't allow your opponent to just control a complete file. You have to contest for that control. And queen d2. You have essentially done the first three things in chess. You develop your pieces, you castle your king, and you connect the rooks. Once you've done those things, you're well on your way in the middle game. See what you can do from there. But sticking to basic principles, let's go. We get rook f2 c8, just getting the double battery on the c file, the queen and rook, putting down some pressure here. Putting down some pressure here because, as we know, chances are this file will be opening up at some point. Bishop d3. Again, very, very simple move, but at the end of the day, the bishop's looking at nothing here, so it may as well be put onto a slightly bit of a better square and look at this pawn here. But again, it's interesting looking from my perspective as like an 1800 player. These are all very seemingly casual, nothing crazy moves, but as you're about to see, Karpov, he's just that good. Like, I can understand it to a certain extent why you would make these moves, and if I was given more time and I wasn't trying to make this YouTube video about an hour long, I could explain it a little bit in better detail, but I can't get myself into Karpov's mind because he is a positional mastermind and I am not. Okay. We get the move G6. Now, why is that such a good move? Because as said earlier, the idea in the Italian Ruy Lopez is the knight reroutes to G3 and then to F5, but no longer. So the knight is kind of really stuck here because there's no point moving it to G3 as you're not going anywhere. Okay. Speak of the devil. I'm obviously not a GM. Yeah, so the knight goes to G3 anyway, but where else was it really going to go? I guess it adds another defender to the E4 pawn. I mean, you can move it there. Again, not a GM. Okay, let's see. We get bishop back to F8. Now, I often say this is a GM move. When I play this in my games, I'm always like, I'm looking professional. The bishop back to F8 move is always good. Well, not always good. Again, always depending on circumstances. And in these circumstances, it was staring at a pawn. So the G6 move stops the knight coming in, and also now allows the bishop fianchetto. Makes sense, but again, very, very locked structure. Bishops really being nullified in these kind of setups. Your knights are really the pieces that, if you're trying to develop as a chess player, in this kind of position, it can feel very, very difficult to calculate, and you can often struggle. My advice would be, look at the knights, find an outpost, find how to get to the outpost with a knight. That is usually your best line of order, your best procedure in these kind of structures. Okay. We get rook A2. Going for the potential double up of the rooks, trying to maintain control of the A file. The A file is the only file that is completely open at the current moment. So it seems like if when you've got this locked, nothing really going on that side of the board, shift your attention over to the other side of the board. And here, there isn't much going on because it's all pretty locked. Going for the double up. Okay. We get C4. Now, interestingly, what you'll notice is be very cautious when committing pawns, especially over the halfway line, i.e. from the middle of the board, pushing your pawn technically into your opponent's territory. Number one, always be cautious doing that, and only push the pawns when you've really, really considered it. The engine didn't like that move that much. And especially be cautious when committing pawns when you are playing Anatoly Karpov, as you're about to see. So, he commits the pawns. It is with a threat on the bishop, so it's something that Anatoly must address immediately. We get bishop back. Now, it's an interesting move because it stops the double up of the rooks. And again, seemingly the engine hated that move. If we just watch, here, the engine actually says bishop e2. Play bishop e2. Plus 0.6 for white. Play bishop e2. And I would probably play either bishop e2 or bishop f1. You won't want to play bishop c2, obviously, because you would blunder the rook and that you would feel like an idiot. And bishop b1 just feels very, very awkward. It's back to the starting file, and it's cutting off the other rook from coming in to double it up. But Anatoly Karpov plays it anyway. Now, would I go with the engine, or would I go with Karpov? Don't know. But if this was my position and I was playing this, I guarantee you, every single time, bishop e2 or bishop f1. But Karpov plays bishop b1. Cutting off the double up of the rooks. Interesting. And we get queen to d8. The only explanation I can give for this move, again, is, well, this file is certainly not opening up anymore. You've pushed the pawn. You've closed that potential down. Maybe you are trying to reshift the queen somewhere over here towards the king side and trying to launch some kind of attack. That is the only explanation I can give for that kind of a move. again, chess is all about momentum. It's about shifting momentum from one area of the board to another area of the board. Okay, let's see. And this, oh, hey, I was meant to do a pause the video. I was meant to do a pause the video moment, but forget it. Okay, now this is my first time doing one of these. You're gonna have to lay off because I've only ever recapped my own games and such. Okay, this is where Anatoly plays, in my opinion, the first brilliant move of the game. The really outstanding positional move. It may not be a brilliancy according to chess.com. It may or may not, because I haven't checked it. But for me personally, it is an absolute positional brilliancy, and he plays bishop a7. It's such a good move. It's hard to actually comprehend. And yet it's such a different style of play than most chess players. You're essentially locking out the control of the rook so that your rook has complete control over all these squares. And again, this is the game that really made me realise it's not about actually controlling a square in the sense of having a piece on that square. It's about controlling space. Being a good chess player is about controlling space on the board, occupied or not occupied, but usually, in my opinion, controlling squares that are unoccupied is uber important, and this game is what really reinforced that to me. Now that the rook controls all these squares, and the bishop controls this square, but it also allows you to move the queen onto e3, getting it onto a little bit of a better square, but also potentially allowing you to infiltrate with the queen or rejig the bishop onto b6, for example. It's a crazy good move. It's a hard spot by any stretch of the imagination. And as you'll see, it only gets worse. It only gets worse for Paul Wolfgang. Okay, so we get knight to e8. Now, why did he play knight to e8? You can only assume, because in these styles of locked positions, you want to get your knight out of the way, because oftentimes you wouldn't mind playing f5. Now, there isn't a rook on the f8 square, so it wouldn't come with a rook behind it, but it could potentially alleviate some pressure later down the line. It also allows the queen some scope on the dark square diagonal. Now, obviously, you wouldn't push f5 immediately, because white has enough control over that square, but you want to keep that on the back burner. So it's a potential move at some point, maybe not right now. Maybe he's going to go knight g7 and then push it. Don't know, haven't been through this game in a while. I can only remember good moves like this one. Okay. We get bishop c2. Interestingly enough, as the bishop went to a7, the rooks are now no longer facing each other, which means the rook is not dependent on the queen for defense. Get that bishop off the back rank. It shouldn't have been there to begin with, according to the engine, but hey, it's the chess.com engine. So remember, guys, always remember when going through games, the engine that chess.com uses and the engines that GMs use are two different things. This is an engine on chess.com, and GMs use engines that use the cloud and have far more computing power. So a best move here might not be the best move in the position. It might be something completely different. Okay. So, bringing the bishop off the back rank, and we get the knight going the other way. Knight to c7. It's an interesting move. The engine doesn't love it. You can, from White's perspective, for sticking to principles, you can double up the rooks, which I think is the best move recommended by the engine, and I think is a fairly easy spot. Again, doubled rooks is a pretty basic principle. Let's see what happened. We did get the doubling of the rooks. So now Anatoly locked off the file with the bishop and now has complete control over the only open file on the board. And if we look at Wolfgang's position, it's not that special. The knight here dominated, okay? The knight here not going here, not going here, certainly not going here, dominated. The bishop, looking at a pawn, not going here, not going here, not going here, dominated. This bishop, looking at a pawn, going here, looking at another pawn, and goes here, spaghetti, you're down a bishop. Look at black's position. You're a grandmaster. Look at his position. Garbage. Every single piece you have is completely dominated. You haven't got any good moves. Well, you have good moves, but not great moves. Okay. Queen e7. Was it the best move recommended on the engine? It was. Queen e7, connecting, getting off the back rank, I guess. I mean, again, it doesn't change all that much because there's not really all that much you can change. Karpov has taken complete control of the board. You've committed your pawns in a very, very weird, almost mirrored-like structure here, and this is Karpov in his zone right here. Okay. Puts the queen there. Not sure why, but at the same time, as we discussed, you haven't really got any great moves here. And we get bishop back to b1. Now, the only thing I can deduce from bishop b1 is Karpov sitting there like this and going, go on then, play something. Because again, he's got him dominated. He's played, that bishop has gone to and fro b1 more times than I care to count. He's literally sat there going, you've got nothing. You have got nothing. I'll wait for you to commit more pieces, to commit more pawns, and then I will manipulate them, and I will manipulate the position, and I will dominate you. So if you're Wolfgang, you're sat there thinking, what in the hell is going on here? What? He's just moved that bishop off of b1 to c2, and now he's moved it back. And it's that psychological warfare. The mind games start coming into it. But okay, engine doesn't love it, but again, engine's not human. Okay. Now, what do you play if you are Wolfgang? Again, same problem. Not many great moves, but here, the move that Wolfgang picked was bishop to e8. But again, you will now have two bishops on the starting 8th rank, both of which I can't say are doing particularly well. As you know, bishops like open diagonals. They don't particularly like to be looking at pawns. It's a sign of weakness. If you're looking for reads, like in poker, and you're Karpov and you see that move, you go, got you. Because it's a sign that he's stuck. What do you do? Not that sure. Okay, now, the engine here says knight to e2 is the best move. Because this knight is not doing anything. It says move it back. But still, I'm not seeing why that would be that great of a move, because even rerouting it, it's going to be dominated most places. But let's see. Karpov did play it, actually, knight e2. Interesting. But again, when you have this much positional control over the board, you can kind of play whatever you want because Wolfgang doesn't really have any good moves. Okay, so we get knight e2. Not all that sure why. And Wolfgang plays knight to d8. But as you'll see, as you'll notice, look at all of Wolfgang's moves. Rubbish. Rubbish. The knight goes back. Where's it going? Nowhere. So he's moved the knight back, and it's still completely dominated and still completely controlled. Now, normally, with these kind of positions, knights can find a little crack in your defense and find a nice little outpost and sit on there, but Karpov has got the position completely controlled. Again, potentially at some point, you might want to play f5 just as a bit of a respite, just to get a break in the position. Obviously, White has that currently controlled, but in locked positions, you're looking for that desperate pawn break that can cause all that tension to just poof and explode in the position. Okay. We get knight to h3. Was that engine move? No, h2, sorry. It's one of the top engine moves. Knight to h2. maybe Karpov is going for the break first. I've got you dominated, all your pieces have been rejigged a million times and they're now doing nothing. Now I'm going to launch my attack. Knight h2, going for the f4 break, almost certainly. Especially if you're going to h2, you can almost guarantee f4 is coming. We get bishop g7. Why not? I mean, again. Now, actually, in this position, this makes a lot of sense. Because if f4 is coming, and you take, you then have a very, very nice open diagonal for the bishop. So this is a good move. I like this move. But again, you haven't really got anything else you can play, really. You're not going to go there, because that's a blunder. And all your other pieces are completely dominated. So it's a very simple thought process if you're Wolfgang, because you haven't really got anything else to do. Okay. f4. So, Karpov is going for the pawn break, but allowing black to have a very, very nice dark squared bishop. Obviously, Karpov has something in mind. And interestingly enough, Wolfgang does not take. Now, here, the best move recommended by the engine is e takes on f. And I think I would probably play that. There isn't a rook on any of these squares, so the f file is not under a huge amount of pressure, because he's already committed the rooks, and he's blocked one of them with his own bishop. So there isn't any rooks on here, so I probably would take it. If he takes with the knight, again, we have a lot of control over any of the squares the knight can get to. So for me, it makes perfect sense to capture that and finally give myself some respite. Finally open up a very, very nice diagonal looking at a backwards pawn and potentially a rook. And here we get this move, which I don't know if this is like this is 1974, a bit of a time before engines. So maybe this was seen as something that was acceptable, but I don't think you would see this. I don't think you would see this today, to be honest. I don't like that move at all. He gave you the chance to open up the position, to give one of your pieces at least a little bit of scope, and you've locked the position again, and basically put yourself in the exact same predicament you were in earlier, which is that all of your pieces are completely dominated. Okay. I mean, yeah, literally all of them. It's a positional masterpiece. Okay. f5. Which is the best move recommended by the engine. And again, you're playing against Karpov. He's a positional player. He likes his pawn structures. He likes locking down the position. Why would you play f6, allowing him to just crush you slowly like a boa constrictor? He's taking all the space. All of your pieces are dominated. You're Zugzwanged, and you're still not allowing yourself to open up the position, even when the opportunity was given to you. Come on, Wolfgang. And we get g5. Now here, this is such a monumental mistake, because if we look at that half of the board, or that section of the board, white has two knights in the vicinity of this area. This side, this whole side, from the D to the E split on the left side, locked, going nowhere. You are, now that you know that momentum is switching to the right hand side, and it's very, very locked on positional, and Karpov has the two knights on that side at hand, ready to go, you're in trouble. Now here, the best move recommended by the engine is knight to g3, taking some control of this square and potentially bringing one of the knights out to whichever square you need it later, potentially g4, etc., etc. But here, Anatoly again with this weird, like almost you've got nothing, haha, in your face. Plays bishop back to c2 for the 3 millionth time. Not bothered. Because again, he knows his strengths, and he knows, let my opponent commit the pieces, commit the pawns, commit to the structure, and I shall undermine it later. Okay, bishop c2. What do you play if you're Wolfgang? Not sure. The engine recommended move, you're not going to believe this, the engine recommended move is bishop back to f8. But imagine you're a human being with human psychology. You're not playing that. The bishop just came from there. Hello? Anybody home? That's the best move. If the engine best move is for you to move a piece back to where you've just moved it from, and for it to look at absolutely nothing, you know you're in a bad spot of bother. And it is +2 for white, so the engine does give white a heavy advantage in this position. Here, Wolfgang plays what I believe, even though it's not an engine recommended move, is far more human. Because what else are you going to do? Bishop f7. Is it a great move? No. No, it's not. Definitely not. But what can you do? You are essentially in a Zugzwang. Any move you make is not great, and it's not changing the evaluation of the position. So it's technically not a waste of a move, but you're just waiting for something to happen. But if you're waiting for something to happen for your opponent to do that thing, it'll probably be in your opponent's favour. Okay. We get knight to g3, which is one of the top engine recommended moves. Yeah. Knight to g3. Now the knights will come into play. Now the knights will show you why they are so exceptionally good in closed positions such as these. Now, as you know, the bishop pair is something in modern chess that is seen as a huge advantage. Oh, I've got the bishop pair. On a board like this, I take the knight pair. I take 2 knights over 2 bishops any day of the week. Because knights can rejig, they can spend as long as they like in your own territory. You can move them a billion times. You can go back and then up and then back and then here and rejig it 500 moves if you want to get it onto a beautiful square that is really annoying for your opponent, and you can crush with it. Bishops, on the other hand, not so much in close positions. There's very little they can do. They just sit around and they're jobless, basically. Okay. We get knight to b7. But the knight was on b7 prior. But again, imagine you are Wolfgang in this position. What do you play? All of the engine moves are moves that he's just played. Bishop f8 is one of the engine moves, and knight to e8 is an engine move. Knight to e8? Where's the knight going? Nowhere. If you're Wolfgang, you've got to be fuming. You've got to be fuming. And it all stemmed from this bishop a7 moves, doubling the rooks on the a file, taking all that control, locking the pawn structure in a way that benefited him, and now he's got you banged to rights. He's got you banged to rights. You've got nothing. Craziness. This is positional play masterpiece. It is unbelievable how beautiful this is. Okay, so Wolfgang to move, goes bishop b7, knight b7. Okay, again, nothing. It's a fly on the wall. It doesn't do anything. But what do? Don't know. Okay. Now here, engine move is queen f2, which looks pretty good. You know, getting your queen and bishop battery lined up, but I mean, you've got all the players, you've got all the good moves to think about, all the outposts to look for, and you can devise a plan. Whereas black is really stuck. Okay, here, Karpov plays bishop d1, which is the second best move recommended by the engine. Just, again, controlling space. Taking away all of the control on the board. Saying, no, I control everything. I am controlling. And once you lose control, you lose potential moves because you don't have... That square is no longer a potential choice for you. Okay. Now, we get the move h6. Again, smells of desperation. I bet Karpov was sat on the other side of that board and he could just smell it. Desperation. All of these moves are, for lack of a better word, pathetic. But at the same time, you can't blame Wolfgang because you haven't got any other choices. You've played a pawn structure that is not to your benefit whatsoever. I don't know whether or not he was familiar with the position. And Karpov is just grinding him. Grind. And you're left with nothing. So, now the ball is back in Karpov's court, and Karpov goes for one of the best moves recommended by the engine, bishop h5. Because Karpov knows if you can trade off, maybe play something like queen e2, a knight here, potentially even g4, he'll have a monster outpost for the knight. The bishop, the light square bishop is completely trapped anyway. It's not getting out anywhere over here. It's not going to be doing anything on any of these squares. He may as well get rid of it. Here, the best move is bishop takes on h5, but it wasn't played. Played a much more human move, which I would probably play myself. Queen e8, going for the battery. As always, to take is a mistake, but in this position, to take was not a mistake. And here, we get queen to d1. Again, not letting go of that tension, not trading off early, maintaining the tension. Now, the engine did say bishop takes on f7 was best, but maintain the tension. You have all the control. Take your time. Okay. We get knight back to d8, and I can't remember how many times I've seen these moves from Wolfgang. They've both played the same move multiple times, but for different reasons. Karpov is like, you've got nothing, and Wolfgang is, I have nothing. Very different. Okay, so here again with another interesting move. The engine here says bishop b6 is your best move. But again, Karpov, being aware of how dominant his position is, plays this. Rook a3. Why, you ask? I have no idea. But again, grinding the psychology and the mental stability of your opponent, and like Wolfgang's looking at that and thinking, I can't. There's no reason to play that. He's basically, essentially, he's mocking me and saying, "Do what you got to do. What are you going to play? Let's go." And again, the ball is back in Wolfgang's court, where you've got to commit to another move, but you haven't got any good moves. Positional awareness. Karpov played a positional masterpiece. Okay. Here we get, again, can you smell it? Desperation. Not one of the engine recommended moves, but again, doesn't really do all that much. King f8. Why, you ask? Not sure. Not sure at all. But again, look at black's pieces. What would you do? No idea. Okay. Now here, the engine recommended move is actually bishop to g6, but Karpov played rook 1. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. What this actually is. Rook 1 to a2. Bro, he's laughing in your face. He's literally moved the... maybe there was a purpose behind that. Maybe a3 and a2 weren't just laughing moves. Maybe he's going for queen a1. He might... There may be some madness to it. But the knight also looks at this square. If the knight moves out of the way, then he would have decent control. I'm going to predict that queen a1 doesn't happen. I do genuinely believe this is Anatoly saying, I've got you. This is psychological warfare. I don't think queen a1 will happen, because actually one knight move and Wolfgang will have enough control over a8. So I don't think that's what he's going for. Here we get, believe this chat, believe me when I say look at this move. Wolfgang's last move was king to f8, yeah? Can you guess? Pause the video. Can you guess what Wolfgang's move was? Pause the video right now. Wolfgang's move was the one, the only. King to g8. Wow. Phenomenal. Moving it backwards and forwards. I mean, again, desperation. You know you've got your opponent banged to rights. Just rejigging the king. Okay, so what do you do now? You're Karpov. You've got the momentum. Here, Karpov plays a very, very interesting move here. Karpov plays, and it's not an engine recommended move, but it is a amazing move. Knight to g4. Now, the engine's not going to like that. The engine's not going to like that. But when you think about it, it is actually a very, very, very good move. Now, you may be thinking, if you're a lower rated player, why not just take on h5? Well, if you take on h5, I can recapture with the knight, and you cannot recapture the queen because spaghetti-o, knight takes on f6 check, opens up a discovery on the queen, and I'll have your queen, and I'll be up a full queen. But funnily enough, it is actually the engine recommended move. The engine wants bishop takes h5, knight takes h5, and just a simple queen to f7. And you should be fine. But that's not what was played. Can you guess what Wolfgang? I can't myself from laughing because it's that funny. Do you know the move that Wolfgang played? Pause the video if you wanna. Wolfgang played the move king to f8. Again. Look at this position. Look at it from White's perspective. Control. Looking down here, control. So from Karpov's perspective, it's all control. And from Wolfgang's perspective, it's all controlled. Controlled. Completely controlled. Definitely completely controlled. Completely controlled, 100%. Controlled, not going anywhere. Controlled. He's not played any tactics. He's not played any crazy sacks. It ain't no Mikhail Tal. And yet, look at his pieces. The material is one pawn a piece, and yet essentially, Karpov has all his pieces, and Wolfgang has none of them. None of them. He has no pieces, zero, all via positional play. Mastermind, a masterpiece. It's crazy. You don't see games like this. Very rarely you do. It is amazing. Okay, now. Again, Karpov's move, and we get the best move recommended with the engine, knight e3. Opening the scope here, but again, just rejig, put the knights wherever you want, because your opponent, and again, can we guess, ladies and gents? Can you guess, for the billionth time, pause the video moment, what did Wolfgang play? Wolfgang played king to g8. Unbelievable. We've never seen this move before. This has happened. It's just crazy. Twice he's repeated this. He's used 4 of his moves to go king f8, king g8, king f8, king g8. The sweet smell of desperation. I mean, can you blame him? No. You can't blame him because he hasn't. What can you do? Nothing. Here, we finally get one of the top moves. The top move is bishop to g6, interestingly enough. Unfortunately, Karpov didn't play that. That would have been very interesting to see. And the reason being is if you play bishop g6 and you take, you may give up the pawn, but you do get a very, very, very nice outpost controlling lots of very important squares for the knight. But not only do you get one of them, you also get 2 of them. Ta-da! So that would be a pawn sack, but realistically, you're out for the count. Unfortunately, Karpov didn't play that, but you can't blame him. Again, keeping the tension. Got all of the choices. Karpov played bishop takes f7 check, the third best move recommended by the engine. Here, again, even if you take with the knight, you are still completely dominated. Here we get knight takes, indeed. I mean, why not? The knight's on the back rank, you may as well get it off the back rank. Boom. Okay, fair enough. And here, Karpov plays the best move in the position. h5. Now, why did Karpov play h5? You can only assume there are a few reasons. One, there is a potential queen trade. Karpov may realise that he is just better and think, I can trade down here, get a couple outposts for the knight, and I'll be better. Also, you could even, I don't know if you would want to, but you could maybe play knight g4, adding some pressure down here. You could play knight g4. Yeah, actually no, yeah. The reason this is so good is because you can, in the future, play knight g4 and potentially queen g6, pinning the bishop and then threatening both pawns. Genius. Okay, here we get a crazy move. You guys are never gonna, and it's not the crazy move you're thinking about. It's not a king move. That's the key. That's the key. He's not bringing king back to f8 for once. He plays knight back to d8 from the very square from which it came. Again, the sweet smell of desperation. Here, Karpov, again, just positional mastermind, plays the move. Queen. Wait, no, pause the move. I've already told you. I've already let it slip. I was too excited. Queen g6. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Equal material. Equal material plus 5 on the engine. Equal material plus 5 on the engine. Now, you may be thinking, why? Let me explain. If queen takes, pawn takes, right? The pawn controls the king, dominates the king, and dominates this knight still, and allows you 2 outposts with the knight. That's 4 good reasons why taking you are absolutely kaput. If you take, you are 100% kaput, lost, sayonara, never knew you, resign. As soon as those knights jump on that outpost, along with the pawn here, controlling here, finish. You ain't got no moves. See in a bit. Never knew you. Now, so you can't take, but it's the engine recommended move. You can't, you know you can't take. You know you can't take. It's terrible. But it's the engine recommended move. The engine recommended move, if it could be, look, they need to add this into the engine. The engine recommended move here should well indeed be to knock your own king over. Because if the best move in your position is to do a move that you know is fundamentally and awful, it's time. Knock that king over. Here we get the one, the only, the Wolfgang signature move. Da 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 da. King f8. This is what we call a wet fart. You think it was a fart, you actually crapped your pants. And now, Karpov, cool, calm, collected, played the one, the only. Knight h5. And here, Wolfgang resigned the game. Sick to his stomach. Tilted. Fuming. Could not believe what he had just witnessed. I can't believe what I've just witnessed, and I've seen this game before. I mean, look at it. Look at it. Take a moment. Gaze in its beauty. Look at this position. One has control, the other one is controlled. One has all his pieces, the other has none of his pieces. Wolfgang's sick. Resigns. There is no move. There isn't anything you can do. You have no moves. You are Zugzwanged. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is, in my opinion, the greatest positional masterpiece ever played. Ever. It is incredible. Look at it, gaze at it, screenshot it, get a painting of it and put it on your wall. It's unbelievable. And like I said, I come back to this game every so often when I'm looking for that motivation and remind myself how to play chess. To be a good chess player, you need to control space. Control. You don't need crazy sacks. You don't need tactics. Control the space. Occupying the space is one thing, but controlling the space is a completely different thing. And here, Karpov controls everything, and you control nothing. So whenever you go back to your chess clubs and you're looking at how to play, think of it like this. Look at the empty squares on the board, not the squares that are occupied, the empty squares, and think to yourself, how can I control that space? So guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please save it so you can watch it in the future whenever you're feeling low, whenever you've lost 150 elo in a day, or you've lost an important match and you're hating chess. Come back to this video for a little bit of motivation, a little bit of an uplift. It can be done and it will be done. And please share this video, send it in your WhatsApps, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your Discords, wherever. Spread it like a wildfire. But yeah, guys, I hope you appreciate this recap. It was a first of many. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.